I, Sigmund Freud, find in Donald Trump a remarkably transparent case study that validates many of my fundamental theories about the human psyche. Indeed, rarely has there been a public figure whose psychological mechanisms are so clearly visible through the lens of psychoanalysis. Trump's personality structure presents a classic case of what I termed narcissistic fixation, demonstrating an almost textbook manifestation of arrested development at the primary narcissistic stage. His constant need for admiration, his inability to empathize with others, and his grandiose sense of self-importance all point to what I would diagnose as a severe narcissistic personality organization, likely rooted in early childhood experiences. The defense mechanisms I identified in my clinical work are strikingly evident in Trump's behavior. His relentless use of projection, attributing his own unacceptable impulses to others, is particularly noteworthy. When he accuses others of dishonesty, weakness, or corruption, we see a transparent projection of his own psychological content. His use of denial and splitting, the inability to integrate positive and negative aspects of reality, is equally apparent in his black and white categorization of people as either completely loyal or absolute enemies. His relationship with reality provides a fascinating example of what I termed the pleasure principle, overwhelming the reality principle. Trump's tendency to deny or distort any facts that challenge his self-image demonstrates a failure to develop the ego strength necessary to mediate between internal desires and external reality. His notorious relationship with truth reveals a persistent triumph of the pleasure principle over reality testing. The concept of repetition compulsion, which I outlined in Beyond the Pleasure Principle, is evident in Trump's behavioral patterns. His repeated engagement in self-destructive behaviors, particularly in his insistence on maintaining narratives that ultimately damage his interests, suggests a deep-seated compulsion to repeat early traumatic experiences. Most intriguing is Trump's relationship with crowds, which validates my observations in group psychology and the analysis of the ego. His ability to form libidinal bonds with his followers through the mechanism of identification, while simultaneously positioning himself as the group's ego ideal, demonstrates precisely the dynamics I described in mass psychology. The regression of individual ego boundaries in Trump rallies, where followers surrender their individual superego functions to their leader, provides a perfect illustration of group psychological phenomena. The Oedipal dynamics in Trump's relationship with authority and power are particularly revealing. His simultaneous desire to overthrow existing authority while demanding absolute loyalty from subordinates suggests an unresolved Oedipal conflict. His relationship with his own father, as evidenced in his biographical material, appears to have created a template for his later relationships with authority figures. In conclusion, Trump presents us with what I would call an open-book case of narcissistic pathology, where the usual work of uncovering the unconscious is hardly necessary. His psychological mechanisms are unusually close to the surface. His presidency has served as a kind of mass clinical demonstration of the validity of psychoanalytic theory, particularly regarding narcissistic personality organization and group psychology. He represents, in many ways, the return of the repressed in American political life.